I know this is something y'all have been waiting to see, and it's finally here, our herb garden tour. I'm also going to harvest, and I know that some of you have requested for us to show you guys how we dry and store our herbs, so I'll also be showing that in this video. Let's get right into it. First up is basil, and this is the first time that we've grown basil from seed. Most of the time we do it from start, and we've always had success that way, but this time we wanted to challenge ourselves and do it from seed. Now they did take a little bit longer to germinate than we were hoping for. That's why they're so small compared to what I thought they would be. But I'm just happy that they did germinate, and it looks like we're gonna get a pretty good basil harvest soon because they have started growing pretty quickly. Next up is a new addition to the garden, turmeric. Yes, it's in a pot right now. We're not sure if we're going to move it into the herb garden or if we're going to leave it in the pot because we'll have to find a way to cover it if we decide to leave it outside. We also got our first set of ginger roots from Azure Standard. We get things there like seed potatoes, starch, and have always had success. We like to use turmeric in our own cooking, as well as sometimes we give it to our cows and things to help deworm and for inflammation. So make sure you stay tuned to see that harvest and watch them grow. Next up is another new addition. This is called tansy, and we received this as a gift from someone when we were teaching them how to call their rooster. So they gave us a couple of tansy plants as well as some elderberry cuttings, but the elderberry is down in our main garden. Someone let me know in the comments below if I should wait to harvest this until there are flowers or if I should be harvesting some of the leaves now. I believe there are medicinal benefits to keeping tansy, but we'll keep you all posted on what we decide to use this for, how we use it, how it grows, and if we would continue recommending growing it in your own gardens. This massive shrub-like plant is called comfrey. We got this a couple years ago when me and Dad were doing our propagation class at Master Gardener. They gave us a tiny little root cutting and it turned into this massive plant. I do know that comfrey is invasive, so make sure that if you plan to add it to your garden that you plan to never get rid of it as well. Comfrey is not edible and should only be used topically, so we use it to make a salve that can be used for minor first aid like burns and cuts. Some people though even use it for broken bones and fractures. We have used it on our animals with great success. I also want to mention that I have been harvesting the flowers so that it doesn't spread by seed because this plant has multiplied like 3 times already this year just by the root. And today I did go ahead and take off some of those bottom leaves to take inside, and I'm going to show you guys, like I mentioned already, how we dry and store them. This is also a new addition to our garden as well. It is German chamomile. Now I know most people grow Roman, but we've already gotten flowers off this, and I have to say I absolutely love the tea that comes from these flowers. We got these starts from Azure Standard as well, and like I mentioned, we've never had a problem with their starts. Make sure you guys are watching our harvest videos so you can see how much chamomile we get this year. Marigolds are something that we grow every year because they're really important for organic gardening. They keep those nasty pests away, but also bring in those good pollinators and good bugs. But this is the first year we've had them in the herb garden, and the reason I decided to include them was because we were having a couple pest problems in the herb garden, so I thought, why not? Let's try and throw some marigolds in there and see if it helps. And sure enough, it did. We haven't had a pest problem since I put them in there. And right here is a calendula. We did this from Azure Standard starts last year, but it wasn't quite enough. We only got 3 starts. Now we did also get another pack of starts this year, but we started a bunch from seed and they all came up and they're all growing beautifully. I've already been getting flowers, and I went ahead and grabbed that one that was there too. I would really love to try making some salve out of this year. This is wild bergamot, another one that we got from Azure that has just been flourishing. I believe this one is in its 2nd year. We haven't received any flowers off of it yet, but stay tuned on those harvest videos in case we do. I believe this is sort of like a lavender. I know it has the same calming effect as lavender. I'm not sure if they're like part of the same family or bergamot's just a different variety, but if someone has more knowledge on this, feel free to share it below. Also feel free to leave below the best ways to use bergamot flowers once we get them. This right here is echinacea. Now I did go ahead and harvest those dark purple flowers that were ready to go. This was another start we bought from Azure. I believe it's in its second year, and we've already received way more flowers than we got last year. We've already used it to make some tea, and I'd also like to try making a tincture with it. After these last couple years, we definitely recommend having echinacea in either your garden or your herb garden. It has been a great way to attract pollinators to our garden. As you can see, there's always a moth sitting on one of those flowers right there. Another start we got from Azure Standard a couple years ago was feverfew. Now, yes, this does sort of look like chamomile. I believe they're part of the same family. I believe that they're sometimes called wild chamomile, but trust me, they do not taste like chamomile. Do not put this in your tea unless you want a very strong bitter taste, no matter what other herb you put it with. We keep this for medicinal purposes, and it has already given us way more flowers than what we can use in our family of 12. One thing to keep in mind when growing feverfew is that it does actually discourage those good pollinators from coming to your garden. We try and combat this by growing lots of things around it that the pollinators love. We also try and keep the open flowers picked, but for us, our herb garden is very separate from our main garden, so it doesn't have too much of an impact on our vegetable garden, and we also grow lots of other flowers down there to try and keep the pollinators happy and fed. If you all are enjoying this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. It really helps us out and we really appreciate it. And here is our oregano. We did keep this in a pot inside the house for a while, but after we moved it outside, it got very big and bushy and sort of took over. We've gotten a lot of oregano off of this plant, and we've been drying it and storing it. Last but not least is the peppermint. Now you have to ignore the weeds here. Sometimes we don't get around to it because we know that the peppermint's not going to easily die just because of a few weeds. It has become super invasive since we moved it outside and has totally taken over, and we're constantly thinning it out. So if you're looking for a plant that does not die, this is the one. Now that we brought our basket of fresh herbs in, I'm going to show you guys how we dry them and store them. So yes, you can take a small handful of these and you can like tie them up and hang them, like this. That's what a lot of people do, but I'm going to show you guys what we do. So after I wash all these, let's just say I wash this peppermint, I'm going to go ahead and put it and lay it out on the rack. Just sort of in a nice thin layer, they can sort of be on top of each other. Now I will fill up this rack with all the herbs in my basket. So we'll put the echinacea on there. We will put this calendula, the comfrey, all that stuff, and then the feverfew and chamomile. What I will do with that is I'll get a little glass jar and I'll actually set it on this rack because they'll just fall through. And then what I do with this rack is I set it on top of our toaster oven. So it has little feet on it, and it lifts it up just high enough that it doesn't cook the herbs, and the heat on top of our toaster oven when we run it is just enough to dry them out. And it only takes a couple days, sometimes a day, depending on how much we run it. And for a family of 12, and we don't have a microwave, so we use the toaster oven to heat up everything. So you can imagine this doesn't take long to dry them like this. And this is how we dry our herbs. And let me show you how we store them once they're dry. For storage, this is really simple. Once they're dry, we just put them in a labeled jar. And I like to use plastic caps for this stuff. So you can see we have a lot of comfrey. I think it's time to start making oil so we can make salve. We have this jar of peppermint. Again, we don't need more peppermint. And feverfew. And as you can see, only using one flower at a time, it's gonna take a really long time to get through all this. Because how often do you need to take a natural aspirin, right? So this is gonna last a long time. Plus I just got all this now, which is like almost this much again. It's like our biggest harvest of feverfew ever. So that's pretty much it. That's how we store, that's how we dry, and that's what we're growing in our herb garden now. If you guys want to see what else we're growing, make sure you check out our garden tour. I have one up from this month, and I will have a new one up next month.